I'm a private investigator, and something weird is going on in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is known for a few things across the United States. If your grasp of geography is weak, the name Arizona immediately brings to mind the Grand Canyon. If you know your geography a bit better, but lean more toward the party scene, you probably think of ASU, the country's largest university. And if you're in law enforcement, you think of identity theft. Sure, the city deals with the typical stolen credit card scams, but its proximity to the border brings additional challenges, especially when you factor in undocumented immigrants. That's why I assumed this latest call from my buddy over at the OIG was about. "Hope I'm not calling too late," Richard said the moment I answered. "Rick, you're in Los Angeles. We're in the same time zone," I replied, pulling the phone away to check the time, 10:30 p.m. "So yeah, it's goddamn late. Unless you're just calling to catch up with an old friend." He didn't answer. I sighed. "It's work, isn't it?" "Afraid so. OIG's willing to pay your usual stipend if you're up for it." I glanced at the tiny IKEA desk in my studio apartment, where 2 pieces of mail sat: a Fry's grocery coupon flyer and a final notice for an overdue credit card. "What's the job?" I heard him sigh, clearly relieved. "You're saving my ass here, Ace. All of our CIs in Phoenix are tied up on a big project, and my boss wants this handled as quietly as possible." "I already said yes, Rick. No need for the sales pitch. Just tell me who I'm looking for." There was a pause, and I could have sworn I heard him mutter "asshole" under his breath before he continued. "We got a spike in reports last year. 18-year-olds applying for their social security numbers for the first time. I know you haven't been out here in a while, but that's not unheard of. Plenty of tiny desert towns around here. Some of them are into that sovereign citizen stuff." "Does the name Freedom ring a bell?" I paused. "There's a town with that name up north, near the Utah border. That's Fredonia. Freedom is supposedly about 20 miles north of Phoenix, according to a statement by Nia Jefferson. I know the Valley of the Sun like the back of my hand, and her description didn't add up. Well, if Nia Jefferson says that, she's full of it, because the only place that could be is Anthem." "Exactly. The thing is, she submitted those requests herself years ago, claimed the town she grew up in had somehow disappeared, and was trying to get answers from anyone who'd listened to her rambling. After a while, she gave up sending emails, and we just started ignoring her. Probably the right call. Sounds like she's nuts." That's what we figured too. Still, she applied for a new social security number, birth certificate, everything. None of her fingerprints or blood samples matched anything in law enforcement or healthcare databases. The state didn't want a legal mess after she threatened to sue, so they gave her what she asked for. And after that, she dropped off the radar. By now, I was out of bed and had opened my laptop, trying to find any mention of a town named Freedom. Well, if Nia's gone quiet, she's not really your problem anymore. Why call me? You're right, Nia herself isn't the issue, but we think she's a symptom of a bigger one. With no leads on Freedom, I shifted my search to anything I could find on Nia Jefferson. A symptom of what? These 18-year-olds applying for social security numbers? Nia got hers 6 years ago. The first few results showed a young black woman with a very active social life, judging by her Facebook. She didn't fit the typical sovereign citizen or far-right profile. Richard continued. Last year, we got a disturbing number of similar cases, 18-year-olds showing up out of nowhere, applying for social security numbers. In the sworn statements from the few who actually filled them out, they all said they came from towns that don't exist. No paperwork, no birth certificates, no driver's licenses. One thing I noticed as I scrolled through Nia's profile, besides the lack of any family connections, was that something just felt off. No parents, no cousins, not even a random aunt in another state. And none of them have any DNA matches within the state? Exactly. All right, How many of these kids am I supposed to track down? I asked, still clicking through Nia's social media. There was something strange I couldn't quite put my finger on. You're not tracking them down. What the OIG needs is for you to get whatever information their lawyer has, then follow up on a few of their claims, see if anything holds water. I stopped clicking, surprised. Wait, all of them had the same lawyer? Yeah, Thomas Silvestre. He's based out of Tempe. A few quick keystrokes brought up his office's website. Greasy hair, cheap suit? That's him. The face rang a bell, so I flipped back over to Naya's Facebook page. Sure enough, there were several photos of him. Same greasy hair, same crumpled suit, standing next to her. He handled Nia's case 7 years ago and all the new ones from last year, from what we can tell. And we've started getting more reports of similar cases since February. Because these individuals received federal benefits, it's fallen to us to investigate. How many are we talking about? I heard papers shuffling faintly on Richard's end before he answered. Naya's the earliest case we have on file. From last year, we've got 3 more. So 4 total? Since February, we've received 5 additional reports. At least, we think so. You think? After preliminary casework filed with Silvestre, we haven't been able to find any trace of those 5. And you want me to figure out if Silvestre is pulling some kind of scam? Or do you want me to track down these 5 mystery clients? I want you to find out what the hell is going on in Phoenix, Arizona. Silvestre's office sat nestled between a bail bond shop, a rundown pawn store, a long dead Circuit City, and a Circle K a short walk across the cracked parking lot. In the far corner stood a liquor store I already knew I'd be visiting on the way out. The afternoon heat gave way to a gust of freezing air as I opened the front door. It shut behind me with the soft jingle of a door chime, the kind meant to alert anyone who cared that a customer had arrived. The chime was answered by a young woman seated at a small front desk. "Hello, how can I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Silvestre on behalf of the OIG." She stared at me, blank. I sighed. So much for good help. "Can you tell him Sam Rockwell is here?" Her eyes widened instantly. Not that Sam Rockwell. From the hallway, a head poked out. "Alejandra?" Oh, the greasy hair and tired-looking suit came into view as he stepped closer. "Mr. Rockwell?" I glanced at the hand he extended in polite greeting, but didn't take it. "Sam's fine. I'm here on behalf of the OIG and was hoping you could answer a few questions." As Silvestre withdrew his hand, I caught the flicker of annoyance on his face, clearly not thrilled about the slight breach in etiquette. "Always happy to help the Inspector General," he said, masking it with a thin smile. I followed him into his office and sat in the worn-down chair across from his desk. The room matched his appearance, sparse and cheap. No wall-to-wall shelves of leather-bound law books like you'd see on TV, just a cluttered desk and an old double-wide metal filing cabinet. I pulled out my audio recorder and looked up at him. "Mind if I record this?" "Of course not." I placed it on the desk, hit record, and got straight to the point. "Let's not waste time, Silvestre. I'm looking for any information you have on the kids you've been helping." He didn't so much as blink. Better poker face than I expected. "I help a lot of kids. You'll need to be more specific." I sighed, flipped open my notebook, and read from the list Richard had given me. Phil Tomlinson, formerly of Walnut, Arizona. Nia Jeffer. Before I could finish, he leaned forward and clicked the recorder off. "That could be considered interference." I started, but he cut me off. He raised a finger. "I'm happy to cooperate, but recording this conversation isn't a good idea, Mr. Rockwell." "Sam," I corrected. "And why's that?" "You said the OIG sent you?" I felt the hidden recorder in my front pocket and subtly leaned forward, keeping myself close enough for it to pick up everything. "They think you might be involved in Social Security fraud and want me to determine if you're playing it straight." "That makes sense." He turned around and opened a drawer in the filing cabinet behind him. "I've got the records somewhere." I let him rummage for a moment, debating whether or not to bring up the second reason I was here. I decided to keep that ace tucked away for now. Here we go, he said at last, pulling out 4 manila folders. Everything I filed with the state and the Social Security Administration. I picked up the first folder and flipped it open. Right on top were the legal forms to request a birth certificate for someone named Tina O'Brien. Any chance I could get copies of these? I asked. I'm sure the OIG already has them, he replied. You should be able to get copies from them. I let out a breath. I'd feel more comfortable if you could just make copies here. I don't like dealing with federal agencies unless they're signing my checks. So, why exactly is it a bad idea to look into this? He stared at me, expression blank. Mr. Silvestre? I prompted, still staring. Please turn off the other voice recorder. My blood went cold. I'm not stupid, Mr. Rockwell, he said, calm but pointed. I do my homework when I don't recognize someone. And your tricks? Not exactly groundbreaking. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the hidden recorder, and placed it on the table. Silvestre picked it up, calmly removed the batteries, and set it aside. I can't stop you from doing what you're going to do, he said, but I strongly urge you to drop this investigation. Clearly, the OIG has no idea what they've gotten themselves into. And what exactly have they stumbled into, I asked. Because I'd love to know what I'm risking my neck for, assuming I'm going to get paid. He gave a weary sigh. They mentioned the 7 kids from this year? I couldn't help but laugh. Of course, the feds didn't have the right number. Unfazed, he continued, they showed up just like the ones from last year. No ID, no documentation, nothing. I was only trying to help. You mean the ones from last Phil, Tina, and Mason? I asked, scanning my notes. Yeah, same deal. I filed for their social security numbers, birth certificates, standard paperwork, but they never showed up to their court dates. I raised an eyebrow. Wait, you don't know where they are? No, when I couldn't reach them, I tried to file missing persons reports. The phrasing caught my attention. Tried? I've got a couple of contacts in the police department. I figured if I pushed the reports through them, maybe something would actually get done. Again with the word try. He sighed again, heavier this time. They put out an APB, but the search was canceled in less than 24 hours. I leaned forward. By who? He looked me in the eye. By the FBI. Perplexed, confused, and without any pressing leads after my conversation with Silvestre, I wandered over to the liquor store in the strip mall. That's when Rick decided to check in, right as my hand hovered over the store's front door. His timing was always impeccable. Hey, Rick, I said, I've got some info and a few leads to chase down. Nothing concrete, ye? You need to stop the investigation, Sam. His words caught me off guard. Even after Silvestre's ominous FBI name drop, the sudden shift still surprised me. Rick? I heard him sigh, frustrated. Strangely enough, for once that frustration didn't feel like it was aimed at me. It actually made me feel like his friend again. Our office just got served with an injunction from the FBI, he said. What happened? I stepped back from the liquor store door and onto the sidewalk. I haven't had time to do anything. I just walked out of my meeting with Silvestre. Did you say the FBI? Yeah, he said, pausing for a beat. Sam, what did you do this time? There was the familiar condescending tone. Like I told you, I just had a conversation with Silvestre. You think his office is bugged? Are you drunk, Sam? No, I replied, glancing at the sign in the liquor store window declaring Tullamore Dew, true Irish whiskey. There was another pause, the kind where you could almost hear someone trying to sniff through the phone. The injunction came in last night, Rick continued. Our office wasn't informed until this morning. They couldn't have known we brought you in or what you were doing, at least not before they issued it, which means they were already watching closely. That's what's got us spooked. I thought for a second. Didn't you guys work with them on the Alvarez case? Hey, Alvarez. Now there was a piece of work. A coyote who made a side business out of helping disabled immigrants get on disability pay. Sounded noble until Richard found out Alvarez was pocketing the checks for himself. One of the victims, despite the looming threat of deportation for fraud, blew the whistle. Even half buzzed, I managed to track him down and convince him to testify. One of the few moments in recent memory where I actually felt proud of what I did. We work with the FBI all the time, Sam. We're a federal agency, Rick said flatly, which is why you need to stop the investigation. Wait a second, I said. I thought you said they didn't know about me? I said they didn't know about your meeting with Silvestre. As far as they're concerned, you haven't done anything yet. Well, that was something at least. You've got to hear me out, Rick. This thing is weird. Some of these kids, the ones you think are just paperwork glitches, they're actually missing. Sam, he cut me off, voice firmer now. You need to stop. The office will pay your stipend for yesterday and today, but that's it. You're done. I paused. Sure, Rick always had that familiar condescending tone, the one that made it feel like he was talking to a kid who tracked mud into the house. But now, buried beneath that tone, was something unfamiliar coming from a buttoned-up federal type like him. Worry. Fine, I said bitterly. I'll just pretend 7 kids never went missing. Pretend they came from towns that don't exist. Pretend our own government is shutting down any effort to find them. I waited for a response. Rick? I pulled the phone away from my ear and glanced at the screen. Disconnected. He'd hung up sometime during my little speech. Motherfucker, I muttered to no one. Silvestre had mentioned he filed the initial paperwork for the 7 kids, so I spent the rest of my day in the ever-thrilling Maricopa County Recorder's office, combing through records for anything he'd filed in the last year. A massive undertaking, considering the man was a practicing attorney with a paperwork trail miles long. Ah, yes, the glamorous life of a private investigator. It wasn't until an hour before closing that I found what I was looking for. Official name change documents for 3 individuals, all aged 18, all filed in the past year. Jacob Addo, Oriana Ito, Trevor Smith. I jotted their names in my notebook. I knew their circumstances, or at least the outlines of them, but had no clue what to do next. If they had gone off the grid willingly, and the OIG had no idea where they were, then odds were I wasn't going to find them either. And if they hadn't disappeared by choice, I wasn't law enforcement, so there wasn't much I could do officially. Maybe the bottle of Tullamore Dew sitting in the trunk of my car could help me figure out my next move. I hadn't cracked it open yet. Drinking like a true Irishman while combing through court records tends to draw the wrong kind of attention. But I planned to enjoy it thoroughly once I got back to my empty studio apartment. Or at least, that was the plan, until I saw a kid standing in front of my door. Given my usual clientele and the lost look on his face, I figured he was probably here to ask if his high school sweetheart was cheating on him. Ah, young love, so full of drama and hope. Office hours are over, kid. Come back tomorrow when I need another bottle and maybe I'll help you. He didn't budge. Kid, I've had a shitty duh. My name is Phil Tomlinson, he said, cutting me off. I looked him over, stringy build, tall, but something about him looked younger than he probably wanted people to think. If he smoked, I bet he was constantly annoyed at how often he got carded. When I didn't respond, he pressed on. Nia said you stopped by Tom's office earlier. You were asking about us? I pulled my key from my pocket. He stepped aside politely as I stuck it into the door. Not anymore, kid. Go home. No sense worrying about some half-drunk PI poking around your business. Mr. Rockwell, that's exactly what I want you to do, he said. Unless you're paying me enough to justify pissing off the FBI, I suggest you head back to wherever you came from, Phil. I closed the door before he could answer. He knocked almost immediately, calling through the door, I'm not leaving until you talk to me, Mr. Rockwell. I walked to the kitchen and opened the whiskey. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops," I shouted back. I didn't, of course. And judging by the fact that he stayed planted outside my door for the next 2 hours, he knew I wouldn't. By around 7:30, after 5 glasses of whiskey and not hearing his footsteps retreat, I figured the kid probably had something important to say. I opened the door a crack and stared him down. "You've got 5 minutes to convince me I'm not making a mistake here." I paused, unable to remember his name through the whiskey haze. Kid. Phil. Phil Tomlinson, right? Yes, come on in. Get out of this damn heat." I motioned him inside. "You want a glass?" He glanced at the one already in my hand. "Mr. Rockwell, I need your help." I plopped down onto the mattress in the corner of my cramped studio, the only bed I owned. I waved at the old office chair across from my desk, the room's one other piece of furniture. Phil sat and looked at me with a mixture of urgency and exhaustion. "How much do you know?" he asked. I took a slow sip of my whiskey. "Enough to know there are 11 of you running around with no hometowns, no social security numbers, no birth certificates." Phil chuckled softly. "So, enough." We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the ceiling fan doing little to fill the space. "So what do you need, Phil?" I asked. "I've got a bottle of whiskey still demanding my attention, and it's not going to drink itself." He interrupted, again the theme of my day. "I need you to find Rachel." "Who?" "I thought you said you knew about us." I tried to take another sip, only to find the glass empty. Figures. Did she go through Silvestre too? He was tied up with the others. He passed her off to a colleague. I could guess why he was looking for her. The way he said her name told me everything I needed to know. "She your girl? One of the missing 7? Phil nodded. "You have any idea why the FBI might be so interested in her? And the rest of you?" A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "You didn't know? Silvestre didn't tell you anything?" I asked. "That greasy-haired asshole never tells me anything." "What's going on?" "Not much to go on, honestly. Just that you kids showed up out of nowhere, and then some of you vanished. Now the FBI is shutting down any attempt to investigate." Phil sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "She went missing just a couple weeks after she got here. Barely had time to get anything done. You think the FBI took her?" I laughed dryly. "Contrary to what you might think, the FBI doesn't make people disappear. This isn't Stalin's Russia. Did she say anything strange before she went missing?" Phil thought for a moment. "Actually, yeah. The last day I saw her, she said something. Well, screamed it, really." I raised my eyebrows. "Go on." "She was in bed next to me, middle of the night. I woke up because she kept repeating something. We don't sleep well, any of us, so it didn't take much. But this time, I didn't wake her up. She was curled up in a ball, whispering something over and over, chanting. I'd seen that kind of thing before. Men back from Iraq with minds half shattered, stuck in nightmares that didn't end when the sun came up. Whatever these kids had gone through, it hadn't been easy. I couldn't make out what she was saying at first, he went on. She was so quiet I had to lean in close. I don't have all night, I interrupted. Just get to the point. What was she saying? Phil sighed, clearly annoyed. She kept repeating one word, a name, I think. Lilith. Just that, over and over. He stared at me as he repeated it. Lilith, Lilith, Lilith. Is Lilith one of the other kids like you? No hometown, no records? I asked. No, Phil said, shifting uncomfortably in the chair. And when I asked Rachel about it later, she had no idea who that was either, but I waited, giving him a second to finish the thought. When he didn't, I pushed. But what? She was acting weird after she woke up, he said. Frustrated. I didn't think much of it at the time, but she seemed like she was in a hurry. I figured she was headed to one of her court dates. A court date she never made? I guess not. It's just frustrating, not knowing anything. I glanced down at the empty glass in my hand. For a second, I considered pouring another and ending the conversation there. But the kid was being straight with me. And he'd nailed the feeling I'd been carrying since this whole thing started. Frustration, not knowing. Hell, that probably explained why I became a PI in the first place, back when I still had the luxury of choosing what to do with my life. Mr. Rockwell? He asked, cutting through my spiraling thoughts. I was apparently drunker than I realized. Right. Was she living with you, or? She was staying with Nia, though she spent a lot of time at my place too, he said. Well, then I guess I know who I need to talk to tomorrow. His face lit up slightly. Relief, maybe gratitude. But you're coming with me, I added. I can't. I've got work. Then call out. Be here at 10 tomorrow. If you're not, I'm not doing a damn thing. He showed up about 5 minutes late the next morning. Lucky for him, I decided to sleep in and only woke up when he started pounding on the door. Or maybe it was the hangover pounding in my head. Hard to say. Why am I here, Mr. Rockwell? He asked after I let him in. Because you're friends with Nia, and I'm going to be asking her questions. Annoying ones, pedantic ones, specific ones. Sure, some will be vague, but it's the specific ones that really get under people's skin. He shot me a look of pure annoyance. I had to wonder, just how much had I drunk last night? Oh, and I added, you're gonna need to drive. To his credit, the kid didn't argue. He drove in silence while I slowly came back to life, nursing a large bottle of water and popping a handful of ibuprofen. The quiet was blissful, until it was shattered by his phone ringing. He glanced at the screen, then answered. What's up? I watched his expression shift rapidly, neutral, then annoyed, then anxious, and finally angry. That kind of transformation in under a minute doesn't come from good news. Did you say the FBI? He asked sharply. I leaned closer, my voice low. Who is it? He mouthed the word Silvestre before saying into the phone, Yeah, I get it. I'll meet her there. He ended the call. What's going on? I asked. Nia was picked up by the FBI last night while she was at work. I gasped with exaggerated drama. No way. He didn't appreciate the sarcasm. You knew? I figured now was as good a time as any to be straight with him. Not that they'd arrest her specifically, no. But I did say last night that the feds were involved. His glare softened into something closer to regret. Sorry, my memory hasn't exactly been great this past year. You sure it's not the sleep deprivation? I said, nodding toward the heavy bags under his eyes. I told you, none of us sleep well. He paused. Anyway, Silvestre wants us to go pick her up from the FBI field office in North Phoenix. That's where they took her. And he can't do it himself because... Court appearances, he said with a tired shrug. Fair enough for a lawyer, that tracked. He handed me his phone and asked me to pull up GPS directions. I did, and once he saw the route, he said, Looks like it's about a 20-minute drive. He turned the ignition and pulled out of the lot. So while we're on the road, why don't you tell me what the hell is going on? Or at least what you know about it? I considered holding a few things back, but something about this kid, lost, overwhelmed, and clearly in over his head, reminded me of the last time I actually helped someone through this job. That rare moment where it felt like what I did mattered. So I told him everything. I told him the OIG was looking into Silvestre for potential fraud, that I'd been brought on as a consultant to sniff around and see what I could dig up. I told him how Richard had called me off the case just yesterday. And hell, I even mentioned that the OIG only had records on 5 of the kids from last year. I thought there were 8 of us, he asked, puzzled. At this point, I don't think the exact number matters, I replied. With where you guys came from and how, there could be 100. Phoenix is a big city. It's easy to disappear here. Just as I finished, we pulled up to the Phoenix FBI field office. The building appeared ahead on our right, sterile and official looking under the Arizona sun. Phil turned into the first entrance and drove toward the main doors. Pacing along the sidewalk out front was a young black woman on her phone, visibly frustrated. I couldn't make out her words until Phil waved through the windshield. Nia didn't look up, didn't pause her call. She opened the back door and slid into the car like we were an Uber pickup. I told you, they just asked questions. No, they didn't use undue force. Phil's here now. Yeah. Love you too. I'll be home soon. She ended the call, exhaled sharply, and said, "Who the hell is Lilith?" Phil and I looked at each other. "What?" we said in unison. Naya turned her sharp eyes on us. The FBI kept asking if I knew anyone named Lilith. Over and over. Who is she? We're actually trying to figure that out ourselves, I admitted. Her eyes narrowed. Phil, who's the older guy up front reeking of whiskey? I turned slightly and offered my hand. Sam Rockwell, private investigator. She gave my hand a suspicious look, not taking it. He's the guy Silvestre met with yesterday, Phil explained. The one from the OIG. Yeah, got it, she said, cutting him off. Nice to meet you. Now seriously, what the hell is going on? We gave her the rundown. Everything we knew, which honestly wasn't much. None of us knew who Lilith was. Not me, not Phil. And apparently not the FBI either, judging by what Naya told us about her interrogation. At first, they were just asking where I was from, Nia said. Same questions I've answered 1,000 times for every goddamn federal agency since the day I got to this city. But this time, they didn't push back. When they finally seemed convinced I was telling the truth, they switched gears and started grilling me about someone named Lilith. And I told you, Rachel was trouble from the beginning. I caught the flash of annoyance on Phil's face, clearly a sore spot between the two of them. All right, let's stay focused, kids. Just thud. Something massive hit the car. Phil screamed as he yanked the wheel, trying to stay in control. The car screeched to a halt on the side of the frontage road. What the hell was that? I yelled, bracing myself against the dash. She just appeared. Phil was already turned around in his seat, eyes wide. She was just there in the road. What was I supposed to do? Motherfucker! Naya groaned from the back seat, holding her arm. I threw my door open and stepped out, scanning the road behind us. 50 feet back, crumpled and still, was a body. A woman. Her limbs were tangled at odd angles, but not in the way you'd expect from broken bones, just like she'd collapsed mid-stride. I pulled out my phone to dial 911, only to see no signal glowing across the screen. Leaning back into the car, I glanced at Phil. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his breath shallow and fast. Nia was reaching for the door. Give me your phone, I said. Phil stared straight ahead, locked up. Kid, phone, now. I got it, Nia said, already outside. She was staring at her phone, face tight with worry. No signal? I asked. She didn't answer, just kept looking at her phone like she could will it into working. I sighed and jogged toward the body, hoping, absurdly, that maybe we'd hit some strange Arizona wildlife in a sundress. We hadn't. She wasn't bleeding, and her limbs didn't seem broken. By some miracle, her glasses were still perched on her face, and she was breathing, slow and steady. I knelt beside her, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, strong and steady. Can you hear me? I asked softly. Don't worry, an ambulance is on its way. You're going to be okay. Not unless you brought one with you, came a voice from behind me. We need to use. I turned quickly, hoping to flag down a helpful bystander with a working phone. But the words froze in my throat. The woman standing behind me was completely naked. The only thing covering her was a curtain of raven black hair cascading down to her navel. I stammered, trying to form anything close to a coherent thought. I'm sorry for bringing you here, son of Adam, she said, her voice calm and almost apologetic. Truly, but it couldn't be helped. I can only cross over so many times, and this was one of them. She smiled, not kindly, more like someone sharing a secret only they found amusing. I heard movement behind me. The girl we'd hit, the one in the sundress, rolled over. Her clothes were undamaged from the impact, and somehow so was she. Not a scratch. Her skin was flawless, untouched. She sat up slowly, that same eerie smile spreading across her face. You don't have to apologize, Lilith, she said brightly. Him being here is a gift. The naked woman, Lilith, apparently, laughed. It wasn't cruel, but there was no warmth in it either. So unfortunate that Adam passed down his sins to his descendants. I looked from the girl who just survived being hit by a car at 40 miles per hour to the woman beside her, both smiling, both completely unharmed, and reached instinctively for the 1911 I usually kept in my shoulder holster. Of course, I left the damn thing in my apartment. Great timing, so I did the next best thing. I asked questions. It was the one thing I could still do with confidence. You mean the Adam? As in biblical Adam? Lilith tilted her head, eyes curious. It always surprises me how well your kind remembers its beginnings, but it doesn't matter. My children must return to their paradises now, and you must return to yours. I raised an eyebrow. Phil made it sound more like a hell than a paradise. She turned sharply, her voice suddenly sharp, booming, not loud in volume, but heavy, as if the words themselves had mass. Your world is their hell. The air around me felt like it dropped 10 degrees. My knees buckled slightly from the pressure in her voice. Their so-called parents subjected them to horrors your kind can't even imagine, she said. I gave them something better, a place where they could be safe. Call it a cage, call it paradise. I don't care. What matters is they're away from you. I tried to speak, tried to ask another question, but her voice hit me like a wave, dragging me down as the sunlight above dimmed, darker and darker, until everything around me went black. I came to some time later, blinking against the sharp beam of a flashlight being shone into my eyes. A pedestrian had spotted me unconscious on the side of the road and called an ambulance. I tried explaining what happened. Something about a naked woman in the street, names from the Bible, Lilith and Adam, but it didn't go over well. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Luckily, Silvestre showed up before I was committed for observation. Talked me down. Talked them down. He had enough sway to keep me out of a padded room. It was harder explaining where Phil and Naya had gone. Neither had returned home after we picked her up from the field office. I told the truth, what little I could remember anyway, but it didn't make much sense, even to me. After a few minutes of me fumbling for answers, Silvestre left. There was sadness in his eyes. Resignation, maybe. The FBI stopped by later. Surprisingly polite, even concerned. They were already investigating the disappearances. They didn't press hard. They weren't there to accuse anyone. Turns out, they really did want to help. But no one's been able to find them. Not the Bureau. Not Silvestre. Not me. And honestly, I don't think they ever really found themselves. Not while they were here anyway. Phil said it best. That night he came knocking on my door. It's just so frustrating not knowing anything.